It's not fun to have your 2-ton SUV's brakes hacked just as you're parking in front of a ditch.
Okay, hold on tight. Hold on. Oh,
That's what I've learned from Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek, a pair of hackers who have spent the last year developing a piece of software that can wirelessly sabotage this 2014 Jeep Cherokee.
So this means if you're a Mustang driver, the next time you plow into a crowd, you can just blame it on hackers. So 10 years ago, Wired did a very compelling piece on the hackability of cars, and I want to look into whether or not things have actually improved since then. So let's dive into the state of cybersecurity in cars. And the really cool thing about this is this actually intersects two major parts of my life. One, on the professional side, I deal in cybersecurity, networking, and all kinds of topics in tech, but also I'm quite the big gearhead.
Hi there. Is there a project you're working on?
I know more than you.
All right.
And I'll never forget 10 years ago when I saw this piece from Wired, several local news stations picked it up, and they allowed several hackers to try and break into different types of vehicles, particularly Chrysler models, Jeeps, and the results were actually quite shocking.
These cars had units expose a particular service that probably they didn't want to. It lets you do things like query it for information like the GPS or the VIN or all sorts of other things, but it also lets you just run commands.
So you have to first break into the car remotely over the cell network and then move laterally if you want to do things like send CAN messages. And those are the messages that we can use to control things like steering or the windshield wipers or braking.
And honestly, it's quite surprising that this was 10 years ago, because if you look at a lot of the technologies that they're exploring in this video, these are things that we just take for granted today. The big iPads that we have in the middle of the center console, all the little computers that are managing the engine, dealing with lane departure assist, adaptive cruise control, even in some cases with Tesla and other EVs, small little bits of full self-driving. Even though it isn't fully autonomous driving, it does the best it can, but obviously there needs to be human input. And with that in mind, I really wanted to explore whether or not the cybersecurity around vehicles, automobiles, anything really, has actually really improved, and if it's something we can really count on if we are introducing all this technology to our vehicles. You can call me paranoid, but a lot of the vehicles I own don't have a lot of these smart functions. I prefer the dumb vehicles. I own a 5th gen 4Runner. I own a 2001 BMW Z3. Probably the most advanced vehicle I own is my Ram diesel truck. And even that is an 11-year-old truck.
I have cars. Yes, you do have cars. Would you like to show our friends your cars later? Yeah.
So, I definitely prefer to gravitate towards the dumb vehicles that, one, without all these smart features, a lot of the repairs get a lot cheaper. The repair times and the complexity of those repairs is much lower, and there's far less to exploit. So let's see if my paranoia is actually justified. Now, it looks like in the 10 years since that report released, some things have actually improved, while others have kind of gotten worse. Not necessarily in the sense of technical capability, but just the proliferation of a lot of this technology has actually led to more attacks, and more attacks leads to more visibility into the problem, of course, potentially leading more hackers down the road of trying to hack vehicles. But let's dive a little more into the numbers to get the context. Now, according to Upstream, even in the 2020s, it looked like between 2021, 2022, and 2023, there was actually a 2.5 times increase in the amount of high and massive scale incidents regarding automotive cybersecurity. In fact, the technology that we love the most in these cars, or at least the people who are looking for this technology, they're looking for those fancy infotainment systems. It looks like these attacks have actually doubled, or almost doubled, in 2023, and they account for 15% of all the attacks, up from 8% in 2022, and that is a huge increase. You see, why this is particularly concerning for me is most of these vehicles, not just Teslas, but even vehicles from the big three, Japanese automakers, German, you name it, half of these vehicles look like they're just rolling iPads on wheels. You get inside one of them, and the only thing you really have any kind of feedback or real input into physical input is the steering wheel and the pedals, and even those are controlled by wire. Even in 2025, some researchers were able to demonstrate control of some of the functions and access to location history with Subaru vehicles. And what it looks like is happening is a lot of these attackers are exploiting all of the different backend API functions that govern the applications on these rolling tablets. You see, I like to rope in this problem into the overall issue known as the Internet of Things. Now, the Internet of Things, for those who aren't aware, is the concept that describes all of the different devices that we have in our homes that are now connected to the internet that weren't once before. This can include your refrigerators, your dishwashers, your coffee maker, your speakers, your television, your couch. It doesn't really matter. It can be really anything so long as it is connected to Wi-Fi and probably has some sort of cloud service attached to it. It can be considered part of the Internet of Things. And while some of these devices might have made our lives easier in certain ways over the past 10 to however many years we've been introducing Wi-Fi into everyday household items, this has also widened the attack surface. Because the problem really comes about when these devices are created. These new functionalities are put into your refrigerator, your couch, your dishwasher, and it's done without security in mind. It's not baked in. And this goes just as much for cars. In that report you saw, these Jeep Cherokees had in a lot of this over-the-air functionality, all these wonderful new features that everyone was so excited about. And it's not just Jeep. It was Ford, it was GM, it was everybody. And the problem is that all these lovely features were put in there, but the over-the-air functionality didn't have a very strong security apparatus guarding it. And really, what good is all this technology if all it's doing is creating a nice wide open backdoor for attackers to take control of your vehicle and not just steal your information, but even potentially veer your vehicle off the road and put your life in danger? This becomes even more problematic when we deal with the potential future of self-driving cars. I mean, if cars don't have steering wheels and we rely on software to guide us to where it is that we're supposed to go, who's to say that this wouldn't cause a massive widespread outage of vehicles if an attacker were to get access to some sort of centralized database or a centralized control system that has the ability to kill switch every vehicle attached to it. All right, so there's a lot of the bad. The good thing is it's not all doom and gloom. There actually has been a lot of updated, best practices and industry standards that have come about since that report came out 10 years ago. As of January 2021, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration released its own drafted cybersecurity best practices for the safety of modern vehicles. You see, this guidance was meant to provide certain best practices for auto manufacturers so that they could apply new cybersecurity management processes and institute these cybersecurity processes into the development of the vehicles rather than trying to fix the problem on the back end. So when we're thinking about the development of automobiles and the software that governs all of it, we should be keeping in mind the security functions that should be baked into the software as the overall software is being developed, rather than trying to find the issues after the fact and then try to create new software patches as it is being used. Because I'm sure most reasonable people would agree that they're not really interested in being test subjects or guinea pigs for software security functions as they're being rolled out. You see, the thing is, I already have enough things to worry about, whether it's the awful Portland drivers that drive 10 miles under the speed limit or some random person deciding to walk out in the middle of the road, all without having to think about whether or not my vehicle is being hacked by somebody and whether or not they're going to send me careening into a ditch. So for my own personal use cases, I'm glad that some of the over-the-air update improvements are coming down the road, and a lot of the security frameworks are being built into the software as it is being released. Because really, it's just keeping other people from driving into me rather than me having to worry about what the software in my car is doing, because most of my cars aren't going to really, at least for the foreseeable future, have to deal with this problem. So what can everyday drivers do to prevent this issue? I know I can't really talk everybody into going out and buying a car from the 90s, and frankly, I don't really want you to, because I want to keep them as cheap as possible, and if everybody goes out and buys them, well, that's going to be a problem for me. So if you're not going to go out and buy a 90s car, which you shouldn't, I would recommend you make sure you stay on top of those over-the-air updates. Now, luckily, a lot of the car manufacturers pretty much do them automatically for you. You know, you don't really have to worry about it, something that happens in the background. However, it wouldn't hurt to check every now and again if your car is actually up to date, the infotainment, everything is up to date. That way you can make sure you have all the latest security patches. Also, perhaps cybersecurity should be one of the things you consider when you are buying a new car. You know, there are specific brands that have a reputation for breaches or cars being stolen because the electronics are easily, exploitable. Probably something you should know. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that Kia was the victim of specific types of attacks from a gang or a loosely affiliated group of people known as the Kia Boys. And these people would use USBs to hack into specific cars and use these USB cables to start vehicles and steal them all without the key. You see, not all hacking is done over the air or remotely. It can be done simply by walking up to your car and finding ways to get in. So where do I think we stand on the whole car cybersecurity debate over the last 10 years? It looks like a lot of the manufacturers have gotten wise to a lot of the potential vulnerabilities to their cars. However, as they introduce new features, add in more software, more computers, we are broadening out the attack surface, and it's unlikely that these attacks are going to stop altogether. We've seen some recent increases in cyber attacks on vehicles, but it looks like that auto manufacturers are doing the best they can. The best I think we could hope for is a game of whack-a-mole where the auto manufacturers find out new vulnerabilities and they try to stamp them out before they're exploited. Meanwhile, attackers are always looking for new exploits. So pretty much business as usual as far as car cybersecurity is concerned, or just cybersecurity in general. And with that out of the way, it's time to get down to the typical content creator script. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm continuously looking for new topics and developing out new content for LinkedIn and YouTube. So if you really enjoy what we put out there, be sure to leave a comment down below. I really do enjoy the discourse back and forth. And with that out of the way, I'll be sure to see you on the next one. Take it easy.